Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack one of the most counterintuitive secrets in global economics. It's a hidden strategy that actually governs the prices you pay at the grocery store, the availability of jobs in your town, and the immense quiet power struggles happening between nations right this very second.
Picture this. You wake up, check your bank app, and find out your money just lost 20% of its value overnight. Your first thought? Absolute disaster, right? Suddenly, imported phones are completely out of reach, petrol prices are soaring, and that foreign vacation you've been planning is now impossibly expensive. It feels like a total economic catastrophe. But here's the crazy part. For your government, this might actually be a highly calculated victory.
Section 1. The weak currency secret, and why governments actually want it. To understand this paradox, we have to nail down the core difference in how money loses its value on the global stage. First, you have currency depreciation. Think of this as an accident of the market. Investors lose confidence, the economy stumbles, and natural market forces just drag the currency's value down. But then you have currency devaluation, and this is entirely different. Devaluation is an intentional, deliberate, and deeply strategic choice by a government or a central bank to actively lower the value of their own money. Section 2. Why weaken your money? The massive export advantages. So why on earth would any world leader purposely destroy their own money's purchasing power? Well, the answer starts with the fierce, cutthroat competition of global trade. Let's just run the math on a real-world scenario. Imagine a Chinese toy export facing a heavy 30% US tariff. If the exchange rate sits at 7 yuan per dollar, an American buyer is going to pay $1.30 for that toy after the tariff. But if China deliberately weakens the yuan to 8 per dollar, the base price of that toy in US dollars automatically drops. Even with that exact same 30% tariff slapped on top, the final cost to the American buyer is now only $1.15. This mathematical maneuver is how China allegedly offset massive 200% and 30% tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. By just tweaking the currency, their products stayed cheap in America, and they didn't sacrifice a single cent of local profit back home. And we see this exact same dynamic across totally different industries. Take a Pakistani factory producing footballs. Let's say the local cost to manufacture those footballs remains perfectly steady at 5,000 rupees. If the exchange rate simply weakens from 100 rupees per dollar to 125, the cost to a US buyer instantly drops from $50 down to $40. Just like that, those footballs are 20% cheaper for foreign buyers, purely because the rupee weakened. This makes the product incredibly competitive on the global market, which sparks a massive surge in exports, drives up factory production, and secures vital local jobs. But the benefits for a country actually go way beyond the factory floor. A weak currency acts like millions of dollars of free advertising for the tourism sector. In places like Japan, tourism absolutely booms when the currency is weak because visitors suddenly feel incredibly wealthy when paying for their trip. On top of that, a weak currency acts as a stealthy, invisible tariff on foreign competitors. It makes imports naturally more expensive for your own citizens, which organically forces them to buy local. And here's the real kicker. It magically shrinks a government's domestic debt. Because if a country owes money in its own currency, the inflation caused by that devaluation means they're paying back their debt with money that is functionally worth much less than when they originally borrowed it. It's an accountant's dream. Section 3. How governments devalue currency using central bank tools. Okay, so how do they actually pull this off? Central banks generally execute this strategy using 3 distinct macroeconomic levers. First, they can cut interest rates. This means government bonds pay less, so foreign investors dump them, instantly lowering demand for the currency. Second, they can literally just print entirely new money, an action you'll often hear called quantitative easing. By flooding the market with this fresh money, they crank up the supply, which inevitably drops the value. And third, they can aggressively use their own foreign reserves to buy and sell on the exchange market, manipulating the currency rate directly by sheer brute financial force. And to really put the sheer scale of that last tool into perspective, just think about this number: 3 trillion US dollars. China utilizes a war chest of roughly $3 trillion in foreign reserves to carefully buy and sell the yuan, just to hit their daily target exchange rate. If the yuan gets a bit too strong, they sell it. If it falls a little too fast, they tap into these massive reserves to buy it back. It is an unbelievably resource-intensive, highly managed balancing act. Section 4. The dangerous side effects and devastating domestic costs. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a cheat code for a booming economy, but this economic superpower comes with a very heavy price tag. While the exporters and factory owners are popping champagne, the average citizen gets absolutely crushed. Because when your currency is weak, everything you buy from outside the country costs more. Imported basics, things like petrol, essential medicine, everyday technology, they skyrocket, creating runaway inflation. If your salary stays exactly the same, but your groceries and your gas suddenly cost 30% more, you've just suffered a severe loss of purchasing power. Plus, if the country borrowed money in a foreign currency, like US dollars, well, a weak local currency suddenly makes paying back that foreign debt impossibly expensive.
And honestly, the darkest side effect of this entire strategy is wealth inequality. When you compare the reality of a stagnant salary against rising inflation and skyrocketing asset prices, the gap is horrifying. As inflation bites down hard from a weakened currency, the wealthy start to panic. So what do? They dump their cash into assets like real estate and stocks to protect their wealth. This pushes those asset prices completely out of the stratosphere. Meanwhile, everyday workers are stuck at the bottom with stagnant wages. They become fundamentally poorer because their paychecks aren't growing, and they are entirely priced out of the very assets that could actually protect them from the inflation. It literally becomes a state-sponsored engine for wealth inequality.
Section 5. The global currency war and the race to the bottom. So, if a weak currency works so brilliantly for boosting exports, what happens when every single country decides to pull the exact same trick at the exact same time? Well, you get what economists completely dread: a currency war. This is a mutually destructive economic standoff where multiple countries competitively devalue their own money just to steal export market share from each other. Think about it. Country A weakens its money, so country B loses customers. Naturally, country B retaliates by weakening its money even more. It becomes a vicious race to the bottom, and the IMF strongly warns that this only results in broken trade relationships and global market panic, where absolutely no one wins and everyone just suffers from massive, uncontrollable global inflation.
And history absolutely proves the danger of meddling with currency values too aggressively. Take the 1985 Plaza Accord, for example. The U.S. successfully pressured its global allies to weaken the U.S. dollar to help fix American trade deficits. Sure, it weakened the dollar, but it accidentally caused the Japanese yen to massively spike in value. Almost overnight, Japanese exports became way too expensive for the world to buy. To save their drowning export industry, Japan panicked. They printed massive amounts of cheap money and flooded their economy with it. This caused people to invest wildly, ultimately creating the biggest popped asset bubble in history by the 1990s, leading straight into Japan's infamous lost decades.
Ultimately, all of this highlights a really fundamental truth of macroeconomics. A weak currency is not inherently a sign of a weak country, and a strong currency is not automatically better for everyone. The value of a nation's money is really just a tool. Deciding exactly how to use it is a brutal, high-stakes balancing act where every single intervention sends profound ripple effects across the globe and directly into a citizen's wallet. So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. If you were the one holding the macroeconomic levers of your own economy, which painful trade-off would you choose? Would you lock in a stronger currency to keep imports cheap and fiercely protect the purchasing power of your citizens? Or would you choose a weaker currency to ruthlessly defend your local factories, boost your exports, and create jobs at the cost of inflation? The answer definitely isn't easy, but understanding that choice is the very first step to making sense of the global economy. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Catch you next time.